The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. During the 1482 Festival of Fools in Paris, Quasimodo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, is elected the Pope of Fools for being the ugliest person in Paris. He is hoisted on a throne and paraded around Paris by the jeering mob. Pierre Gringor, a struggling poet and philosopher, tries unsuccessfully to get the crowd to watch his play instead of the parade. Archdeacon Claude Frollo appears and stops the parade and orders Quasimodo back to Notre Dame with him. Looking for something to eat, Gringor admires the graceful beauty of La Esmeralda, a gypsy street dancer, and decides to follow her home. After rounding a corner, she is suddenly attacked by Frollo Gingor, and Quasimodo rushes to help her, but is knocked out by Frollo as Frollo runs away. The king's archers, led by Phoebus the Shatupus, arrived just in time and captured the hunchback. Later that night, a group of beggars and thieves are about to hang Quasimodo when La Esmeralda comes forward and offers to save his life by marrying him for 4 years only. The next day, Quasimodo is put on trial and sentenced to 2 hours of torture in the Place de Grève. He suffers both the pain of being stretched and pulled apart, as well as being publicly humiliated by the crowd of people who hate him for his ugliness. He begs for water, but no one answers his pleas until La Esmeralda comes forth and brings him something to drink. Nearby, a recluse called Sister Gudule screams at La Esmeralda for being a gypsy child thief and blames her for her daughter's kidnapping 15 years earlier. A few months later, La Esmeralda is dancing in front of Notre Dame and Phoebus calls her over to him. She has fallen in love with him and blushes when he asks her to meet him later that night. Frollo watches them from the top of Notre Dame and becomes insanely jealous of Phoebus. His obsessive lust for La Esmeralda has made him renounce God and study alchemy and black magic. In his secret cell at Notre Dame, he plans to trap La Esmeralda like a spider catching a fly with its web. Later that night, he follows Phoebus to his tryst with La Esmeralda and stabs Phoebus repeatedly. He escapes and La Esmeralda is captured by the king's guard. After being tortured at her trial, La Esmeralda falsely confesses to killing Phoebus and being a witch. She is sentenced to hang in the Place de Grève. Frollo visits her in jail and declares his love. He begs her to love him and show him some pity, but she calls him a goblin monk and a murderer, refusing to have anything to do with him. Before her execution, La Esmeralda is publicly humiliated in front of the Notre Dame. Looking across the square, she suddenly sees Phoebus and calls out to his name. He actually survived the murder attempt but doesn't want anyone to know that he was injured. He turns away from La Esmeralda and enters the house of his bride-to-be. Just then, Quasimodo swings down on a rope from Notre Dame and carries her back to the cathedral, crying out, "Sanctuary!" He had fallen in love with her when she brought him water and had been planning her escape all along. La Esmeralda is safe from execution just as long as she stays inside the cathedral. At first, she finds it hard to even look at Quasimodo, but they form an uneasy friendship. Even though he is deaf, he enjoys being around her when she sings. Meanwhile, a group of vagabonds resolves to save La Esmeralda after hearing that Parliament has ordered that she be removed from Notre Dame. But when Quasimodo sees them attack the cathedral, he thinks that they have come to kill La Esmeralda, and he fends them off as best as he can, killing a large number of them. Frollo had used the attack as a diversion to sneak La Esmeralda out of the cathedral. He offers her two choices. She can either say she loves him or be hanged. She demands to be executed, and he leaves her with Sister Gudule. To their astonishment, they discover that they are mother and daughter. Gudule tries to protect La Esmeralda, but it is too late. Back at Notre Dame, Quasimodo goes to the top of the North Tower to find her. Gazing off into the distance, he sees the figure of La Esmeralda in a white dress hanging from the scaffold. He bellows out in despair and grabs Frollo by the neck. Holding him up in the air, Quasimodo sighs with grief and then throws Frollo down to his death. Looking at La Esmeralda hanging off in the distance and Frollo's wrangled corpse down below, Quasimodo cries out, "There is everything I ever loved." Quasimodo is never seen again. Years later, when a grave digger stumbles across La Esmeralda's remains, he finds the skeleton of a hunchback curled around her.